Deportation policies don't just affect the individuals sent back to their countries, they leave behind ripple effects that touch every corner of society. From unfilled jobs to declining property values and weakened small businesses, the social and workforce impacts of these policies are reshaping local economies across the United States. In this video, we'll dive into how these deportations are creating economic gaps that U.S. citizens and businesses are struggling to fill. Let's explore the untold consequences of this controversial issue. Deportation policies targeting immigrant workers have left significant gaps in industries that rely on a steady and consistent labor force. Many deported individuals held roles in agriculture, construction, and hospitality, sectors that are critical to the economy but often overlooked. These jobs, typically low-wage and labor-intensive, are roles many U.S. citizens are unwilling to fill. As a result, these vacancies are causing widespread disruptions, which ripple through the broader economy, affecting productivity, prices, and consumer experiences. The agricultural industry has been one of the hardest-hit sectors. Farms depend heavily on seasonal immigrant workers for planting, maintaining, and harvesting crops. When these positions go unfilled, the consequences are dire. Unharvested crops, fruits and vegetables that require manual harvesting, such as strawberries, lettuce, and tomatoes, are particularly vulnerable. Without enough workers, these crops are left to rot in the fields, leading to significant financial losses for farmers and a reduced food supply for consumers. Rising costs. With fewer crops making it to market, basic economic principles come into play. Lower supply combined with consistent or growing demand drives up prices. Consumers feel the pinch at grocery stores, paying more for fresh produce and other agricultural products. Wasted resources. Labor shortages don't just waste crops, they waste the water, fertilizer, and other resources that went into growing them. This inefficiency further burdens the agricultural sector and exacerbates environmental concerns. Case study: California's Central Valley, one of the most productive agricultural regions in the U.S., has reported losses in the millions of dollars due to unharvested crops and insufficient labor, underscoring the urgent need for workforce solutions. The hospitality industry, which includes hotels, restaurants, and event venues, also faces immense challenges from labor shortages. Immigrant workers have traditionally filled many of the jobs in housekeeping, food service, and maintenance, roles that are essential to keeping the sector running smoothly. Without them, the industry is struggling to maintain operations. Reduced services. Many hotels are operating with reduced housekeeping services, offering cleaning only upon request or less frequently than before. Similarly, restaurants are closing for additional days each week, reducing their hours, or eliminating menu options due to staffing constraints. Tourism impact. In tourist-heavy areas like Florida and Las Vegas, limited hospitality services lead to negative visitor experiences, discouraging tourism and reducing local revenue. Tourists who encounter fewer dining options or subpar accommodations may choose alternative destinations, further harming the industry. Economic loss. Hospitality businesses have reported reduced profits as they cut services or spend more to attract new staff. In many cases, increased wages and signing bonuses are insufficient to fill positions, leading to permanent closures of some establishments. The effects of deportations aren't confined to agriculture and hospitality, they're felt across many other industries that rely on immigrant labor, further straining an already fragile labor market. Logistics and transportation immigrants play a crucial role in warehousing, shipping, and trucking. Deportations have left gaps in these roles, leading to delays in the movement of goods. This affects everything from online orders to grocery store inventory, creating frustrations for consumers and losses for businesses. Cleaning services. Janitorial work in office buildings, schools, and hospitals often relies on immigrant labor. Without these workers, many facilities are struggling to maintain cleanliness standards, which impacts health and safety. Childcare. Many immigrant workers provide essential childcare services, allowing parents to participate in the workforce. Deportations have left families scrambling for childcare options, reducing productivity and further straining household budgets. The unfilled job vacancies created by deportations don't just affect individual industries. They have far-reaching consequences for the entire economy. Reduced productivity. Labor shortages lead to slower production and service delivery, reducing overall economic output. Higher consumer costs. Businesses often pass the increased costs of hiring and training new workers, or the inefficiencies caused by vacancies onto consumers, driving up prices. Stalled economic growth. With key industries struggling to operate effectively, the broader economy faces slower growth, making it harder for communities to recover and thrive. The workforce gaps left by deportations underscore the vital role immigrant labor plays in keeping America's economy running. Without immediate solutions to address these shortages, industries will continue to struggle, and the economic consequences will deepen. Deportations don't just affect the labor market, they have a profound impact on housing markets, especially in regions with large immigrant populations. Immigrant communities often serve as a critical driver of demand for housing, particularly in urban and suburban areas where they contribute to the vibrancy of local neighborhoods. When deportations reduce the population in these areas, the housing market feels the ripple effects, from stagnating property values to significant financial losses for homeowners, landlords, and local governments. Immigrant communities play a key role in maintaining demand for housing. Whether they rent or buy homes, their presence contributes to the stability and growth of local real estate markets. Deportations disrupt this equilibrium by reducing the number of residents in affected neighborhoods, causing demand to drop. Fewer buyers' deportations reduce the pool of potential home buyers, leading to slower sales and declining property prices. Vacant homes left vacant due to deportations can create a visible sign of economic distress in neighborhoods, deterring potential buyers from investing in the area. Community decline. As populations shrink, local amenities such as shops, schools, and recreational facilities may also see reduced usage, further dampening the appeal of the neighborhood. For homeowners, declining property values can have long-lasting financial consequences. Reduced equity. Lower home values reduce homeowners' equity, which is often one of the largest sources of personal wealth. For example, if a home valued at $250,000 drops to $200,000, the homeowner loses $50,000 in potential wealth. This limits their ability to use home equity for important expenses, such as funding education, starting a business, or making renovations. Financial insecurity. Declining home values can push some homeowners underwater, meaning they owe more on their mortgage than their home is worth. This creates financial strain and limits their mobility, as selling the home may not cover the remaining mortgage balance. The rental market is also deeply affected by deportations, particularly in neighborhoods where immigrants make up a significant portion of the tenant base. Higher vacancy rates. As immigrant families leave, landlords face increased vacancy rates, reducing their rental income. Properties that once provided a stable source of revenue become financial liabilities. Lower rents. To attract new tenants, landlords may be forced to lower rents, further reducing their profitability. This is particularly challenging for smaller landlords who depend on rental income to pay mortgages and maintain properties. Maintenance neglect. With reduced rental income, landlords may struggle to afford necessary property upkeep, leading to a decline in housing quality and neighborhood appeal. The housing market doesn't exist in isolation. Its health is closely tied to the broader local economy. When property values and rental incomes decline, the effects ripple outward. Reduced property tax revenue. Lower property values result in lower property tax assessments, leading to reduced revenue for local governments. Since property taxes fund essential services like schools, public safety, and infrastructure, this shortfall can have widespread consequences. Example: a neighborhood that experiences a 10% decline in property values might see a proportional drop in property tax revenue, forcing local governments to make budget cuts. Budget cuts. Reduced revenue means less funding for critical public services. Schools may face larger class sizes or outdated materials, roads may go unrepaired, and public safety measures may be scaled back. These changes further discourage new residents from moving in, perpetuating the cycle of decline. The housing market impacts of deportations extend beyond individual homeowners and landlords. They reshape the economic and social fabric of entire communities. Urban centers, cities with large immigrant populations such as Los Angeles, Miami, and New York, may see neighborhoods transform as deportations reduce their vibrancy. Lower housing demand in these areas could lead to an increase in vacant properties, blight, and reduced economic activity. Suburban areas, suburban neighborhoods, which have seen growing immigrant populations in recent decades, may experience similar declines in property values and community resources. This could reverse progress made in diversifying and revitalizing suburban regions. Rural areas. In agricultural regions where immigrant workers often rent homes near farms, deportations could lead to significant population losses, further destabilizing these already vulnerable economies. A case study: the decline in farming communities. In farming regions like California's Central Valley, where immigrant labor is critical, deportations have led to noticeable population declines. With fewer workers and their families in the area, local housing markets have experienced rising vacancies and falling rents. This, in turn, has reduced funding for schools and public services, creating a feedback loop of economic and social challenges. Immigrants contribute significantly to local economies not only as workers but also as consumers. They buy groceries, dine out, shop for clothing, and spend on entertainment and services just like any other member of the community. When deportations remove immigrants from these communities, the ripple effects extend beyond the workforce. Their absence leads to reduced consumer spending, which can severely weaken local economies, particularly in areas with high immigrant populations. This shrinking spending power has a domino effect, harming businesses, limiting job opportunities, and stalling regional economic growth. Immigrants represent a significant portion of the consumer market in many regions. They contribute to demand in essential and discretionary sectors alike. Groceries and essentials. Immigrants spend billions annually on groceries and household necessities. Deportations reduce this spending, leaving local grocery stores and supermarkets with decreased sales. Retail and clothing stores, especially those in immigrant-heavy neighborhoods, see a decline in foot traffic and revenue when their customer base is reduced. Entertainment and dining restaurants, movie theaters, and local attractions lose a portion of their audience when immigrant families leave, creating financial strain on these establishments. The absence of immigrant consumers creates immediate challenges for businesses that rely on local spending. Restaurants and food services, local eateries, cafes, and food trucks, many of which serve immigrant communities or employ immigrant workers, suffer from reduced patronage. With fewer customers, some are forced to reduce hours, cut staff, or even close permanently. For example, a family-owned taqueria in a predominantly immigrant neighborhood might see sales drop dramatically after deportations affect the local population, leaving the owners struggling to cover rent and payroll. Retail stores, small businesses like corner stores, clothing boutiques, and specialty shops, are particularly vulnerable. With fewer customers, these stores often face shrinking revenue, which makes it difficult to compete with larger chains or online retailers. Service providers. Immigrants are key customers for many service-based businesses, including childcare, hair salons, and auto repair shops. When their spending power disappears, these businesses often struggle to stay afloat. For small businesses that already operate on tight margins, losing even a modest percentage of their customer base can mean the difference between staying open and shutting down. Some states and regions are more vulnerable to the economic consequences of deportations than others, especially those with large immigrant populations. California, with one of the largest immigrant populations in the United States, has an economy deeply intertwined with the spending power of immigrant communities. Deportations lead to noticeable declines in retail and service sectors, particularly in urban centers like Los Angeles and San Francisco. In states like Texas, where immigrant communities play a vital role in both urban and rural economies, deportations result in reduced economic activity, particularly in border regions and farming areas. Florida's tourism and hospitality industries are especially reliant on immigrant consumers and workers. Deportations in this state disrupt local economies, particularly in cities like Miami and Orlando. When immigrant spending disappears, it isn't just local businesses that suffer. State economies lose billions in potential revenue, creating broader financial challenges. Reduced consumer spending doesn't just hurt individual businesses, it creates ripple effects that impact entire communities, and even large corporations. With fewer dollars circulating in immigrant-heavy neighborhoods, economic growth slows, and job opportunities shrink. This creates a negative feedback loop, where fewer jobs lead to even less spending. Large corporations, especially those in retail and food services, feel the strain of reduced consumer demand. For example, national grocery chains or fast food restaurants that rely on immigrant-heavy areas see declines in sales and are forced to reevaluate their operations in those regions. Reduced consumer spending also impacts state and local tax revenue, which relies heavily on sales taxes. A neighborhood in Queens, New York, with a predominantly immigrant population, provides a stark example of these dynamics. Following a wave of deportations, local businesses experienced dramatic declines in revenue. Restaurants and small retailers closed their doors, while remaining businesses struggled to attract enough customers to survive. The ripple effect extended to property values, tax revenue, and even public services like parks and schools, which faced budget cuts due to reduced economic activity. Beyond the financial implications, reduced consumer spending has a human cost that's often overlooked. Families who remain in these communities may find fewer options for goods and services, making their day-to-day lives more challenging. Schools, healthcare facilities, and community centers may experience funding cuts, reducing the quality of services available to residents. The loss of immigrant consumers creates a domino effect that touches nearly every sector of the economy. From the smallest corner store to the largest corporate chain, businesses are grappling with the financial fallout of reduced consumer spending. Without immediate intervention to stabilize these communities and support local businesses, the long-term consequences could include widespread economic stagnation and a deeper divide between struggling neighborhoods and more affluent areas. By highlighting the critical role immigrants play as both workers and consumers, this issue underscores the interconnected nature of local economies and the urgent need for policies that protect and sustain them. Small businesses, the backbone of local economies, are disproportionately affected by the ripple effects of deportations. Immigrants often fill essential roles in these enterprises, providing the labor needed to keep day-to-day operations running smoothly. When deportations remove a segment of this workforce, these businesses face staffing crises, rising costs, and in many cases, the threat of closure. The absence of immigrant workers leaves small business owners scrambling to adapt, often with limited resources and slim profit margins. Small businesses such as restaurants, landscaping companies, and cleaning services rely heavily on immigrant workers to fill positions that are labor-intensive, low-wage, and often overlooked by domestic workers. Deportations exacerbate existing labor shortages in these industries, leaving employers unable to find replacements. Hospitality sector, small, family-owned restaurants and cafes, which depend on immigrant staff for roles in food preparation, dishwashing, and customer service, often face operational challenges when these positions go unfilled. For example, a local diner in a suburban neighborhood might reduce its hours or cut menu options due to a lack of kitchen staff, resulting in lower revenue and dissatisfied customers. Landscaping and cleaning services. These labor-intensive industries frequently hire immigrant workers who are skilled, reliable, and willing to perform physically demanding tasks. Without these employees, many small businesses struggle to meet client demand or maintain service quality. Replacement dilemma. Domestic workers often avoid these roles due to their low wages and demanding nature. Business owners attempting to hire local staff are forced to offer higher wages, which further strain their already tight budgets. Adapting to labor shortages comes with significant financial burdens for small businesses. Owners face a difficult choice: raise wages to attract U.S. workers, invest in automation, or downsize operations, all of which carry significant risks. Increased labor costs. Offering higher wages to attract domestic workers may help fill positions, but it often eats into already slim profit margins. For example, a small cleaning company might need to increase pay rates by 20% to attract local workers, making it difficult to remain competitive with larger firms. Automation investments. While automation is a viable solution for some industries, it requires a substantial upfront investment that small businesses typically cannot afford. For instance, a landscaping business might consider purchasing robotic mowers to replace workers, but would face high equipment costs and maintenance expenses. Limitations of automation. Not all tasks can be automated, particularly those requiring personal interaction or complex decision-making. For example, a family-owned restaurant cannot automate the personalized service provided by waitstaff or chefs. Cost versus revenue. Small businesses operating on razor-thin margins may find that increased labor costs or automation investments outweigh potential revenue gains, leaving them in an unsustainable financial position. Closures. The end of family-owned businesses. For many small businesses, the challenges of labor shortages and rising costs ultimately lead to closure. Family-owned enterprises that rely heavily on immigrant labor are especially vulnerable, as they often lack the financial cushion to weather prolonged disruptions. When small businesses close, communities lose more than just a source of goods or services. They lose the unique character and economic stability that these businesses provide. A family-owned bakery in an immigrant-heavy neighborhood might be forced to shut down due to staffing issues, leaving the community with one less local gathering spot and fewer job opportunities. Closures lead to a decline in local economic activity. Workers lose their jobs, suppliers lose clients, and neighboring businesses experience reduced foot traffic. For family-owned businesses, closure isn't just a financial loss. It's often the end of a legacy built through years of hard work and sacrifice. The strain on small businesses doesn't just affect individual owners, it ripples through the entire local economy. Many immigrant-owned businesses bring cultural diversity and unique offerings to their communities. Their closure reduces the variety of goods and services available, leaving residents with fewer choices. The closure of small businesses creates a less competitive marketplace, giving larger corporations greater control over pricing and reducing consumer options. Small businesses often act as hubs for community interaction, fostering connections among residents. Their absence can erode the social fabric of neighborhoods. Urban areas with large immigrant populations such as New York City or Los Angeles have seen numerous small restaurants struggle to survive due to labor shortages. For example, a popular family-run Mexican restaurant in Los Angeles might lose key kitchen staff following deportations, forcing the owners to limit their menu and reduce operating hours. Despite these efforts, declining revenue might eventually lead to closure, leaving the neighborhood without one of its cultural landmarks. The challenges faced by small businesses are directly tied to immigration policies that limit the availability of immigrant labor. Policies such as stricter enforcement of immigration laws and reduced access to work visas under Donald Trump's administration significantly reduced the labor pool for these businesses. H-2B visa restrictions. These visas, which allow non-agricultural seasonal workers to fill temporary roles, were scaled back under Trump, leaving industries like landscaping and hospitality without sufficient staffing. Increased deportations. The heightened focus on deporting undocumented workers created widespread labor shortages, particularly in regions and industries heavily reliant on immigrant labor. The closure of small businesses and the challenges of labor shortages have long-term implications for local economies. Reduced job creation. Small businesses are significant job creators, employing nearly half of the U.S. workforce. Their decline means fewer opportunities for local residents. Lower tax revenue, fewer operational businesses result in reduced tax contributions, which limits funding for public services like schools, transportation, and safety. Community decline. As small businesses close, neighborhoods often experience reduced economic activity, declining property values, and diminished quality of life. The social and workforce impacts of deportations are undeniable, leaving unfilled jobs, declining property values, weakened local economies, and struggling small businesses in their wake. These aren't just numbers on a page, they're real challenges that affect everyday Americans. The question is, how do we address these gaps while balancing policy and practicality? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more insights on how immigration policies shape our society and economy. See you in the next video.